Welcome, everyone. Today, we're dissecting one of the most talked about matches in recent sports history. We're getting right into the anatomy of a defeat, breaking down exactly why Argentina lost the 2026 World Cup final. And look, rather than just focusing on the final whistle, we're going to trace the cascading, systemic failures that unfolded out there on the pitch. Relying on some really comprehensive post-match analysis, we're going to see how just one tactical misstep totally snowballed, ultimately costing Argentina the championship.
1-0. It's the ultimate bottom line, right? That was the final score. Spain 1, Argentina 0, decided after a totally grueling extra time. When the stakes are this incredibly high, a single goal is literally all it takes to separate the champion from the runner-up. But as you'll see in this explainer, that 1-0 result absolutely wasn't just some bad luck for Argentina. It was the inevitable conclusion of fundamental breakdowns across the full 120 minutes of play. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We're looking at 4 key phases of this collapse. First, the tactical imbalance. Second, being choked in the midfield. Third, the Messi dependency. And finally, the final unraveling.
Let's start with Section 1, the tactical imbalance, or basically setting up to fail.
So surprisingly, Argentina's initial setup was incredibly conservative. Analysts noted they played way too defensively, sitting deep for the vast majority of the match. And, when you sit that deep against a possession powerhouse like Spain, you're willingly handing over the keys to the game. By doing this, Argentina basically gave Spain permission to dictate possession and completely control the tempo. Compounding this error was just a shocking lack of attacking intent. The post-match reports show that Argentina failed to register meaningful shots for long stretches. They weren't playing to win, they were just surviving. And that is a super dangerous game to play in a World Cup final.
Now, to truly understand why Argentina's deep defensive stance was so fatal, we have to look at Spain. Spain was executing a relentless high press. Just as a quick refresher, a high press is a tactical style where the defending team aggressively pressures the opponent deep in their own territory to force mistakes. Spain wasn't just holding the ball. When they lost it, they were instantly in Argentina's face, forcing those aggressive turnovers. And Argentina's defense? They just fundamentally failed to handle the heat.
Which brings us to Section 2, choked in the midfield, losing the center.
This created a really brutal cycle of cause and effect. Because Spain applied that aggressive high press, Argentina suffered from incredibly poor ball retention. And because Spain completely dominated midfield control, Argentina fundamentally failed to build attacks. We all know the midfield is the engine room of any soccer team, right? Well, Argentina's engine was completely stalled out. Spain dominated this central area, making it virtually impossible for Argentina to transition from defense to offense.
Under this immense pressure, Argentina frequently lost possession. They simply couldn't consistently play through it. It's kind of like trying to run up a down escalator. Every single time Argentina tried to move the ball forward, Spain's pressure forced an error, sending them right back down. This completely stifled any momentum they were desperately trying to build.
Moving on to Section 3, the Messi dependency, an isolated attack.
Let's follow this chain reaction. Because the midfield struggled to build attacks, Argentina created very few clear goal-scoring chances. In fact, post-match analysis highlighted that they barely threatened Spain's goal at all. Naturally, this leads to a panic response. They defaulted to an over-reliance on Lionel Messi. When the system breaks down, teams so often look to their resident genius to bail them out.
But Spain was entirely prepared for this one-dimensional strategy. The reports noted that Messi was tightly marked and had very little space to operate. Spain effectively neutralized Argentina's only remaining strategy by just smothering him. Think about it. When your entire offensive output hinges on one player, and the opposition successfully swarms that player, your attack is completely nullified. Argentina literally had no plan B. And that leads us to Section 4, the final unraveling and the extra time collapse.
As the game pushed past 90 minutes, legs were heavy and the contrast on the benches was just stark. Tactical adjustments were desperately needed at this point. Spain's substitutes were highly effective. Analysts specifically credited them with helping to actually decide the match. They brought fresh energy, tactical adaptability, the whole shebang. On the flip side, Argentina's substitutions were completely ineffective and had very little impact on the flow of the game. Spain adapted to win, while Argentina's changes completely failed to shift the terrible momentum they were trapped in.
And then, we saw the ultimate breakdown in discipline. A late red card for Enzo Fernandez. When a team is totally exhausted, constantly chasing the ball, and tactically outmaneuvered, frustration is gonna set in. This discipline problem was absolutely the final nail in the coffin.
It left Argentina with exactly 10 players on the pitch. Heading into the depths of extra time against a team that is already dominating possession, pressing you aggressively, and controlling the midfield, doing all of that down a man is a virtually insurmountable task. It made an incredibly hard job practically impossible.
So, what should you take away from all this? Let's bring this narrative together. The 2026 final wasn't lost in one single moment. It was lost through a domino effect of systemic failures. Argentina defended way too deep, which allowed Spain to dictate the game. Their midfield was completely overrun by Spain's high press, leading to terrible ball retention. Because they couldn't build through the midfield, they resorted to a predictable, Messi-dependent attack that was easily neutralized. And finally, the sheer exhaustion of this flawed system led to late-game indiscipline and ineffective adjustments from the bench.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. In soccer, the ultimate team sport, can relying on a single genius actually become a team's greatest weakness? As the 2026 World Cup final brilliantly illustrates, when team structure breaks down, individual brilliance simply isn't enough to overcome a cohesive, tactically superior unit. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown gives you a totally new perspective on how the final was truly won and lost. Catch you next time.